Mr. Bright. Welcome, Mr. Bright. I'm sure you're aware you have 5 minutes with a possible extension of 3. If you could give us your name for the record and the agenda item you're speaking to when you're ready.
My name is Jim Bright. I'm a resident of Narooma. I'm here today to speak about the agenda item on the proposed new codes of conduct. In particular, I want to talk about issues around the procedures and processes in these codes for the handling of formal complaints about council officials. In relation to the wider environment that a potential complainant might find themselves in the New South Wales local government sector, some of you might have seen a paper by me about this in the Beagles sometime last year. In that paper, I describe in some details how only a very small number of complaints of any type are actually ever investigated by the main New South Wales watchdog agencies, such as the ICAC and the New South Wales Ombudsman. The reality is that these days, these watchdogs have very limited staff resources. An additional problem for a potential local complainant about a council matter or council misconduct is that some years back, the under-resourced Ombudsman's Office formally decided that such complaints should normally be sent to the Office of Local Government, not to the Ombudsman. The problem with that arrangement is that OLG also really doesn't have the necessary resources to properly police the 128 councils in this state, and I would have to say that agency displays very little interest in getting involved. Against that background, it is therefore absolutely crucial that a community member who believes that the council officials have acted inappropriately or unlawfully should have access to fair, independent, transparent and effective conduct complaint arrangements available to them within this council. In reality, in the overwhelming number of such situations, there's just nothing else potentially available to them. So that's why here today we have to get these arrangements right. And I'm telling you that the current situation in this Shire is a very, very long way from being right. Turning now to the submissions before you, in the staff report for today's meeting relating to new conduct codes, it has been recommended that you should reject all proposals that were received by the ESC during the community consultation process. In the table on pages 17 to 19, council staff have identified 6 suggested changes to the publicly exhibited codes that were accepted by you for that purpose at the ESC meeting on the 20th of February. Those exhibited codes reflected exactly the new model codes that have been issued by OLG in December 2018. Suggestions 3 and 4 on page 18 relate to one of the supplementary provisions that has been proposed by the Australian Labor Party's Eurobodalla Local Government Committee to be included in the ESC's new code. In brief, the Labor LGC has proposed the addition of provisions for an arrangement in which any conduct complaints that are received by the council would be allocated in turn to each member of the council's panel of conduct reviewers. For many years, unknown to the community until recent times, council staff have apparently referred all or virtually all complaints to just one reviewer. Although this arrangement has not been technically unlawful, it is highly dubious as an appropriate and ethical long-term practice and has become a major cause of consternation within this community. It is also one of the factors that appears to underpin a high level of mistrust of certain council officials in the Shire. In relation to the question of any proposals for a council to supplement its adopted codes, the provisions contained in supplement the provisions contained in OLG's model codes, it is very important to note that the relevant circular from OLG to all councils included the following statement, and this is the quote: in adopting a new code of conduct and procedures, councils may include provisions that are supplementary to those contained in the model code of conduct and procedures. And this is the important one, the sentence: councils may also impose more onerous requirements under their adopted codes of conduct than those prescribed under the model code of conduct. However, councils must not dilute the standards prescribed in the model code in their adopted codes. I would point out that
Mr. Bright, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
Yep.
your 5 minutes are up. I have a mover for an extension of 3 minutes with Councillor McGinley, seconded by Councillor Constable. Councillors, those in favour of a 3-minute extension? Sorry, Mr. Bright, you do not have a 3-minute extension.
not unexpected.
Councillors, are there any questions for Mr. Bright? Councillor May.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Bright, for your presentation. What's your concern if, I think you're suggesting that the council has a panel of reviewers but has a bent or a want or whatever to only use one. What's the issue with that, though? What's the concern you're raising? Thanks.
I think it wouldn't pass any pub test, I think. If you went down to the Monarch Hotel tonight, explained the situations, I think you'd struggle to get anybody to think that was okay. But even putting aside that general impression, the almost inevitable view that one would form is that you've got a reviewer who's getting a lot of work out of this council, and you've really got to form the view that it's possible over time that a particular relationship might be built up with that councillor. That's one problem. And then that maybe even if it's subconsciously, that reviewer might start to sort of think, subconsciously, I don't think I'd like to be upsetting those who are engaging me and paying me on a regular basis. So there's some of the issues that we've got here. It's simply fixed with your panel. Circulate them. You can't, it's almost impossible to start forming those views in a situation like that.
Councillor Nathan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Mr. Bright, there are a few phrases that you've used, and I apologise if I've misunderstood you, but it seems to me that you are impugning integrity of a range of people in what you've been saying. Please could you explain how you think that the pub test is adequate when we're looking at levels of mistrust of officials in the Shire and the possible over time misinterpretation of someone from a review panel?
Just to help me, which thing of mine are you quoting from?
One stage I wrote down that there appears
from
to
what
be a
I've said
high
today.
level of mistrust of officials in the Shire.
Yes.
And at another time you mentioned the pub test that could not be passed. And then there was another about what seemed to me an impugning of the integrity of a reviewer.
Yeah.
I was wondering how you came to those conclusions.
Righto. Well, I'm guessing we don't have the 4 or 5 hours I need to take you through all that, so I'll be brief. I've spent probably, in the last 10 years now, much to my distress, probably hundreds of hours getting myself across the whole framework under the local government in New South Wales, something I'd never had anything to do with previously. And I've been highly involved in a number of contentious issues. I've done an enormous amount of research into the system that's supposed to apply here. Now, just one example, we gave you one of those a few months ago. You just quietly sit in front of the TV one night and read through all of those problems with just one matter that this council's been handling, and you will find an abundance of advice on what you're talking about and absolute evidence sustaining all those things. So just start with that one, and I might come back and we could have a further detail on another occasion.
Madam Mayor, another question, please. Are you aware of the difference, and for want of expression, the difference between legal, health or bureaucratic language and what we would call the pub test and normal communication? For example, the importance of words such as if, may, possible have huge legal intent, where we might have just thought that they're words that just sort of floated through our conversation. Are you aware of those small words and the importance of them in the framing of the language of bureaucracies of whatever kind?
Well, I certainly have. You're talking to somebody who's probably spent more time in bureaucracies than anybody else in this room. I've also been a person that's had to argue the intent of words in awards, in enterprise agreements, in legislation, the Federal Industrial Relations Act, in the Federal Industrial Relations Commission. The issues that you're raising are very well known to me, but I'd need to know. So it'll depend on the context at any point in time.
Thank you, Mr. Bright.